Friends, Brickey here, breaking down EPCOT Future World, fully being completed. The construction walls are down. Folks aren't happy. Let's break down the design and how we got to this moment. I know it's been stated that Disneyland will never be completed as long as there's imagination left in the world. But does the same hold true for EPCOT? Can EPCOT be completed? So with all the construction walls down, my question is this: is EPCOT completed or just completed for now? Because friends, this is my first time ever being able to do this. Walk through EPCOT without hitting a single construction wall. It's my first time ever being here where the whole future world, my favorite part of my favorite non-Disneyland Disney park, is finally construction wall free. And let me tell you, it feels great just to be able to wander in whatever direction I want to go in. Friends, this video will be reviewing this section of Future World. I've already done a video about Moana's Journey Through Water. There's no reason to do that again. I'm focusing on the centerpiece, the new park that opened, as well as Communicore Hall. This is the area that has been boxed off every time I come, and the area that I couldn't wait to finally see when it was all put together and review it as one thought, and not all the little individual pieces that slowly got released over me coming here the last 3 years. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat this today. Most fans are very unhappy with the results. Most people don't like what they got. And I'm not gonna argue. The original concept art of what was supposed to happen was pretty fantastic. But what I wanna do, I wanna take a deeper look at how we got to this version of EPCOT, because it's the only version that I've ever known. So let's break down, was this indeed an improvement? And this is the important part, does it honor Walt's vision of what EPCOT could be? And lastly, we'll end where we began. Is EPCOT fully completed? Or at least for now. So first things first, you know what's really easy to do? It's really easy just to look at something and complain. And you know what's even easier than that? To look at something that people worked hard on and goes, it sucks. But we're not gonna do that today. We're gonna try to go deeper. We're gonna try to look at the design. We're gonna try to look at the creative problem solving and the design within strength that got us to this version of EPCOT's Future World. And you know what? Being honest, it does suck. It does suck compared to the 2019 concept art of what we were promised. That I'm not gonna argue. I'm not a shill, I'm a designer, and being a designer gives you the empathy to understand how other designers got forced to make the decisions that they had to make. Because it would be a great honor for me to be the first channel to try to figure out the why and not the why it sucks. The why we got here and the where we're going next. So right out of the top, we're gonna come clean, we're gonna confess it's not as good as what's promised. But what we are gonna do is break down how and why we got here. Because it takes more understanding to be sympathetic than just to be a critic. And I personally didn't want to make another one of these videos that's clickbait and flashy that just goes, it sucks, they wasted millions of dollars, because I actually think there was a very intelligent play that we're looking at right now inside of this park. And I purposefully used the word park because I think that has a lot to do with the design that we ultimately got versus the design that we were promised at D23. And also, let's let this be an exercise of what our expectations should be going into D23 and how that will transition into our reality in 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Like, this is a 5-year run to get to where we're at today. And granted, in the last 5 years, all of us have lived 50 years, so I'm not ignoring that part of the equation. So the main thing that is missing is a state-of-the-art building that would have been around in this area. The building that I refer to as the Leaf, where it has a very strong cylinder stem that has a overhanging, beautiful, mid-century modern meets futuristic building that would have been somewhere around here. To me, this building showcased Disney at its best. And EPCOT to me has always seemed like a promise of Disney trying to do what they've done exceptionally for years, great environmental storytelling. So when this building got pulled, I was pretty devastated because out of everything that was promised back in 2019, this was at the very top of my list. So since this is really the only version of EPCOT that I know, I can really, hey Walt, I can only really compare this version to the concept art that we were given. And we've already set up that it's not as good. But speaking of Walt, what we got does it honor Walt's vision? Because I think I can make a strong argument that it does. Because I'm sure you know by now, my man Walt Disney had very, very ambitious plans for his EPCOT. And before the big guy left us, he was very, very obsessed with urban planning. And I think if you look at this center part of EPCOT, what you see is some world-class urban planning. And you also just always have to take your love of EPCOT with this in mind. Walt's dreams for EPCOT were a bit ambitious, to say the least. Keep in mind, this entire project was created extracting some of Walt's dreams and then building them with reality. EPCOT has and will forever be a design project of extreme compromise. And I think 2020 made another one of those compromises show up at Walt's little dream. And you know, when I come to EPCOT, one of the things that I see is fantastic urban planning. I could easily spot the first time I came here a tremendous amount of effort was put into Walt's vision for Disneyland, where he wanted to make a safe and clean space that felt like a small little city that had a park-like vibe to it everywhere you look. And when you come to the front of Future World, it feels like one of the greatest parks you've ever visited in your entire life. Like up there with Olmsted's designs. And I know nobody comes here for the park-like vibe, but it is the mortar that holds all the bricks together. The tie that binds us, if you will. And to me, it was one of the most beautiful things about EPCOT. And I think often the new design, it gets judged kind of harsh. But my question for you is this: if your neighborhood looked like the new centerpiece or the new hub of Future World, would you be bummed on it? If that's what your college looked like, or if your office just put in a new parklet like that, would you be as bummed? So when I walk through here, what I do see is good urban planning, good themed planning. This is a fantastic park that any one of us would be lucky to have in our regular life. But I think it gets judged very, very hard because it's designed by Disney. It's in a Disney park, and this is supposed to be a theme park. But the overall theme for this park originally was to make a park that felt like a utopian version of a small city. And that's kind of what this is. And I'm not talking about Communicore Hall. This is problematic to say the least, but I'm talking about the Garden Way in the center. And an interesting thing about EPCOT, it was designed kind of backwards as compared to traditional castle parks. And keep in mind, when they made EPCOT, they had only ever made 2 castle parks before this park. And for all the people that say that this sculpture here in the middle, this flower bed, is shaped like a vagina, fun fact, I came from a vagina. And if that was indeed the inspiration for this planter, not a bad inspiration, considering this is supposed to be the mother of creativity, the mother of invention. This was Walt's big dream, and it takes a lot of hard work to birth a big dream. So I have no problems with putting a thematic birthing canal in the center of this park. But let's talk real quick about how EPCOT is designed backwards as compared to the 2 castle parks that Disney had built before EPCOT. This area right in here is the hub for this part of the park. And off of it, all of the different spokes from the hub take you into small little parklets or crossways into other parts of Future World. And then it does have, like all the other hubs, it has its big icon on the other side of it, which is Spaceship Earth, AKA coolest building ever. But since we come into the park from behind Spaceship Earth or in front of it, this hub part kind of gets lost. It's only really a big reveal if you worm your way around to the center, or if you happen to come over from World Showcase in to Future World, which would technically be coming into the park backwards, since that other entryway over there is kind of only for hotel guests. So the park itself was built a little bit backwards, and that's cool. They were trying to take their successful idea, spin it around, and find a new approach. Whether that was ultimately successful or not, who knows? But definitely want to give points for trying to do something different and take their template and go, is there a way to reinvent this? So since the design is a little bit backwards, I have no problem with all of this creating a little bit of a method to the EPCOT madness. But the big reason for my review not being overly harsh is everything I see in here feels very temporary to me. Don't get me wrong, I think all these little parklets are nice, but none of them feel like they would be too hard to remove when the time comes. I don't think that time is too far away. And where I embrace this is if you can't build one of the best buildings ever, the second best thing to do is to build no building anywhere ever. Had they fully committed to a not as nice building, then I would be concerned and think, oh, that's that for the next 30, 40, 50 years. But the fact that they didn't build a building and built a park instead, to me, that shows promise for something that'll happen not too far away. Where eventually, in maybe a decade or so, when they're ready to build the perfect building and the budgets and timing allow, then maybe something expansive and creative could show up. Because I do predict that none of this will be here for decades. Maybe a decade, but I don't think decades. I mean, just the materials used alone, a lot of the tables, chairs, a lot of the accessories, it wasn't designed to go the long haul. And I know there's a difference between rebuying new chairs and bulldozing a whole area, but everything around me feels like a really great way to solve a 5-year, 10-year problem. So with the pandemic obviously messing with all of the budgets, I do feel like this was a creative workaround for something bigger and better that could happen at a more appropriate time, which is why I don't get too bummed out about what we got. The roughest part of the entire build out is also the most expensive part. I think Communicore Hall was a big miss, but I think it was designed to be one. Where I would be even more nervous about Communicore Hall's design if they had went to some bizarro mid-level of a building that's better than this, but not good enough to last the test of time. This building to me simply looks quick, easy to build, easy to replace, services the problems that EPCOT and Disney needs for this part of the park, but in no way feels like a long-term structure or a long-term solution to short-term problems. I see this building and I think, thank God they didn't go all in on something that was mid, and they basically just built a sophisticated camp that would get them over the hump of the next decade. And who knows, maybe 2029 is when we'll get the promise of what's gonna come next. We can do it all over again another decade later. I do believe that this building was the least amount of effort to meet the requirements that they needed for a show building, entertainment building, and a guest hall over on this side of the park. And I think that's inspiring because that thing would be so easy to replace if and when they feel like they need to. Nobody's going to shed a tear when this goes down, because I have the ability, because this has been my life's history, to see the creative problem solving, an affordable way to honor guests' needs, while at the same time, an affordable way to honor Walt's vision of a clean, safe space of urban planning, the best little park that you've ever seen. And I can also see the designing within restraints, budget cutting, budget slashing, creating something that solves the problem temporary, but not overcommitting to something that you don't want for the long term. You know, it would have been very, very easy just to go, this sucks. But as always, it was more enjoyable to try to understand the why and the how. And I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did trying to discover how we got to this version of EPCOT. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. And I appreciate you too.